Hello and welcome back. In today's episode, we got championship weekend with the AFC and NFC championship taking place for the NFL. And then we also are going to talk about some NBA, my biggest surprises so far, along with teams that I think are overachieving and underachieving. Starting with the AFC championship, we have Patriots heading into Denver for what feels like an underwhelming matchup, in the sense that there's no Bo Nix playing for the Denver Broncos, broken ankle at the end of last week's overtime win against the Bills. I'm really curious to see if Jarrett Stidham is going to be up for the challenge to get them to the Super Bowl. It almost feels like if the Patriots don't win, it's some sort of letdown with the fact that they're playing against a backup quarterback who has only played in 4 games in the last couple years and has not really played at all this year. So you have a team with the Patriots that are coming off destroying the Texans and embarrassing CJ Stroud. That is, for another day to talk about the downfall of CJ Stroud. But Drake May looked impressive. He hit his throws, hit Stephon Diggs, hit Booty, and the defense played really well, turning CJ Stroud over like a washer. So I expect it to be a very back and forth game. I think that the Broncos are going to come out conservative. The Patriots are going to be able to take the lead on the fact that they have a very coherent offense. They know what they want to do, whereas the Broncos don't necessarily have an identity yet without Bo Nix. I think Sean Payton is going to scheme up a lot of very simple concepts for Jarrett Stidham to process, going from right to left, hitting, his progressions. And you really have to rely on your playmakers. Cortland Sutton is going to have to get the ball. Marvin Mims is going to have to get the ball. And then you're going to have to use your dynamic running backs out of the backfield to just make it easier on him. I don't know if he's a gamer. I think that's the question. I know Stidham started with New England, so maybe that's a little bit of extra motivation for him. But I think that it's going to be a 10 to 12 point lead for the Patriots heading into the half. I think that the Broncos are going to make a comeback, but ultimately are going to fall to the Patriots, and the Patriots are, sad to say, back in the Super Bowl with a victory. I'm going to go with 27-20 over the Broncos, but we'll see. And then the other matchup, we have the Rams heading into Seattle after Seattle dismantled the 49ers 41-6. Wasn't close from the start after a pick six. And then the Bears falling to the Rams in OT, giving the Rams the advance to the NFC Championship game. I think this is two quarterbacks at two different stages of their career. You have, Stafford trying to prove and, define his legacy. Getting to a second Super Bowl would be huge, and getting his second overall. And honestly, some people are saying that he might be better than Aaron Rodgers. I feel like that is a discussion to be had, given when he had done it. Obviously, teams are similar, but I think that's a conversation that could be had in the future. And then also Sam Darnold, can he win the big game? He signed a deal in the offseason with the Seahawks team that believed in him. He's at a roller coaster of a career. So it's really two quarterbacks at two different stages of their career. But on the other side, you have, just looking at the rosters, I think the Rams have the better roster overall. They have a young defensive front with some younger guys at the safeties, but and then in the offensive, they're a juggernaut with what they can do in more moderate weather. Back in Chicago, it was freezing temperatures. That's why I gave the Bears the edge in it. But they proved that they don't make mistakes, and they're gonna not turn the football over. And I think that's Stafford is playing pretty clean football as of late. I think that it's going to be high scoring, just like it was the last time they faced off a couple weeks ago. And I think the Rams are going to fall to the Seahawks. I think that on the fact that Sam Darnold is not going to be pressured as much And when he's not pressured, he's a very good quarterback, being able to process and hit his open receivers. JSN, Cooper Kupp, and you have your talented backs with Charbonnet and K9. But I think he proves it. If it was at LA, I think the Rams take it. I think it's just who's ever at home. And that is why I'm picking the Seahawks to win in a close matchup. I think it's going to be a field goal, wins it at the end, but I think it puts them in the Super Bowl. So we'll have a rematch of Russell Wilson against Tom Brady, but this time Drake May against Sam Darnold for the Super Bowl in San Francisco. So that is my NFL takes. And then moving on to the NBA, I think it's really interesting. We're about halfway through the season, almost about to hit the All-Star break. And so there's some key things I wanted to note. Is that the Thunder, still the team to beat. They started off a little bit rocky on the fact that they were going for the Golden State Warriors record, and they didn't end up, getting it. They're one loss away from, not being in contention. But I think that they were on a potential mark to either, go on a bad spiral and kind of things are going to, not go their way and they're going to fall apart. But they really rebounded after a couple losses that they had, mostly to the Spurs and then to a couple other teams as well. I think they show that they're a much more cohesive unit when guys are out. Even, Shea is not playing his best or whatever, even though he drops like 30. But I think that they're still the team to beat. I think the Spurs, if Wemby can get to a point where he can play, consistent minutes and games, I think they're easily the team to watch out for to come out of the West outside of OKC. Just given, one, how they beat up on OKC when they play them. I think they beat them 3 out of 4 times. And then the fact that Wemby is unguardable and no one really has the answer to them. And they have a very good complementary pieces with De'Aaron Fox, Keldon Johnson. Dylan Harper is my rookie of the year, most likely. And then moving on down, we have the Timberwolves, right? The Timberwolves, they're coming off a year where they made the Western Conference Finals. You had Ant Edwards really stepping into that, superstar off an Olympic gold medal. I was expecting him to, maybe have a better turnout this year with their team, just given the fact that they are, in the Western Conference Finals, and they're supposed to be able to show that they're a perennial team, and teams are trying to hunt them down, but they've seemed to just had an up and down season so far, and you can see that by the way that they're sitting at 7th in the West, just not locked in my opinion. I know they've had some injuries as well, like all teams, but you'd expect more from them, and I think that they're missing an opportunity with Ant, stepping into his prime. I know he's just turning about 24, 25, but you can't really be wasting the years when you have guys available. So I think that, they could be on the rise for a trade. People have said Ja Morant. I don't think that works, but I'm not the biggest Ja Morant guy in terms of his ability to play winning basketball. But that's kind of my take. And then, you go to the Lakers. They're a team that is talked about the most in the NBA. You have LeBron, you have Luka, you have JJ Redick, Austin Reeves, and they've really hung around that 3 to 5 range with JJ really hampering on the defensive side, guys not getting back, the passing isn't the way it is, and I think if you really get Luka to buy in, because he's really, in my opinion, the second best player when he's giving his all to the team and really just being able to maneuver the offense, because LeBron at this point is just not going to be your number one, which you shouldn't. He's 42. He should be in a men's league at this point. But, that's why he's considered the GOAT. But that's just my opinion on the Lakers, just how they're not taken serious as a championship contender until they can buy in defensively, because a lot of teams can feel like they can get their stuff off against them. Those are my takes. If you like what you see, go ahead and like and subscribe. We're going to be having these takes every single week. And catch you next week.